I am an enormous virtual reality enthusiast, and I've made several videos about VR spanning years that nobody has watched because nobody else seems to care about VR. Prophesied for decades as a market disruptor, head-mounted displays were supposed to change the world. But 8 years has passed since the first modern VR headset, the Oculus Rift, and it kind of seems that VR is headed in the way of the 3D TV rather than the iPhone. Even as a VR evangelist, I have trouble recommending headsets to anyone other than niche gamers with deep pockets that don't mind spending a lot of money on pricey hardware and a shallow software catalog that starts and ends with mostly short game demos. Try as they might, nobody has been able to target general consumers beyond that limited gaming segment, and even then, the venture is seldom profitable. So, the idea that Apple, a famously cautious company, one that hasn't announced a new product segment in nearly a decade, plans to enter the head-mounted display space in 2023 with a headset many times more expensive than the industry's priciest competition seems, in a word, bananas. Despite that, rumors suggest that it is certain to happen this year. So, let's talk about what we know considering Apple's Reality Pro headset, what we don't yet understand, and if it'll be a black swan or a black eye in the company's legacy. We know the headset will resemble modern VR goggles, like the Meta Quest Pro. It's not going to be a pair of ultra-thin, crazy futuristic Minority Report glasses. From the outside, though, it'll look nice, similar to the AirPods Max, with an aluminum, glass, and mesh cushiony construction. The headband will also house some internal speakers, and the headband itself may or may not be removable. Rumors are split on that. But much of the internal workings are where weight will be saved. It's rumored to be constructed of carbon fiber and lightweight polypropylene, important to curb the weight where possible in order to maximize something that is literally sitting on your face. Last thing regarding the exterior. Reliable leaker Mark Gurman also believes there will be a curved display on the outside of the headset that can, quote, outwardly show a wearer's eyes to those not using the headset. This seems bizarro to me, but so has Animoji for the last 5 years, and that's been a thing. So maybe there will be emotive Animoji visible to people not wearing the headset when you are wearing the headset using pass-through mode. More on that feature in a minute. Now, the headset would be able to outwardly show a wearer's eye positioning thanks to built-in eye tracking, similar to that found in the PSVR 2, which uses the feature for, at least on the PSVR 2, foveated rendering. And that is, rendering in higher detail where your eyes are actually looking to save on compute power. And that may also be necessary for Apple's headset because rumors agree that there will be 2 Sony OLED microdisplays, one per eye at 4K each. Now, if you haven't heard of microdisplays, you are not alone. Sony is the only producer of OLED microdisplays, which are literally tiny screens. They're used in camera electronic viewfinders, AR, and other niche applications. But not only are they small in size, they are uniquely using a technology that allows them to put the CMOS circuits right on silicon substrates, giving them the ability to drive smaller, brighter pixels. How small? Well, Reality Pro's displays are projected to use a pixel size as tiny as 4 microns, 10 times teensier than a high-density smartphone display. The technology Sony is using, OLED on silicon, is often branded by LG and Samsung as micro OLED, which is expected to come to larger displays like smartphones and TVs in the next few years. So these Sony OLED micro displays are also micro OLED screens. Super simple, right? The 4K per eye resolution Apple is targeting is very high, but it's not unprecedentedly so. The surprise, Sony PSVR 2 also offers 4K per eye. Now, it's often said that refresh rate matters way more than resolution in VR, and that's somewhat true, but it's also not, because as we've explained previously on this channel, you need a sufficiently high pixels per degree value to get rid of the screen door effect. That's the visible black gaps in between the individual pixels. Older headsets like the Valve Index and Quest 2 did this by just ditching OLED, which was used in the very first VR headsets, in favor of fast-switching higher-density LCD panels. Those solved the screen door and latency issues, but ruined things like dynamic range and true black levels. was a compromise. It was a trade-off. The PSVR 2 is the first headset, and it's also the most modern headset, to return to OLED with a high enough pixel density and response time to best out pretty much any LCD-based headset on the market. But it retains Fresnel lens technology, which has been used in pretty much every VR headset before it, something that Apple is boldly moving away from. Fresnel lenses used in VR headsets are just a scaled-down version of the ones found in lighthouses from hundreds of years ago. Using terraced concentric beehive-like circles, they can maintain a high aperture which lets in a lot of light, but while maintaining a short focusing distance, without the weight and thickness of a traditional convex lens. They work really, really well, but they're not perfect. In high-contrast scenes, you'll experience glares called God rays. There's also chromatic color aberration once you move your eyes away from the center of the display, and the sweet spot is typically very narrow, and any movement of the headset on your noggin will pretty much throw off focus entirely. Apple is expected to use expensive pancake optics, which use many folding lenses on top of each other in a curve. The end result is a much shallower Z depth, which can make Apple's headset much lighter and much thinner than conventional VR headsets, but they also benefit from a wider sweet spot. There's no chromatic aberration and no lens distortion correction processing that your GPU has to deal with. That's a problem with Fresnel's. They also have their own flaws, though. They don't offer as wide of a field of view. Apple's expected to have a 120-degree field of view, which is better than the PSVR 2 and Meta Quest 2, but not nearly as good as something like the Valve Index, and a huge monumental cry from something like my old Pimax 5K, which possesses a 200-degree field of view. It's almost as wide as my human eyes can handle at about 220, depending on how good you are at passing your driver's test. That field of view will make the Reality Pro feel very dive masky, but honestly that's kind of par the course for VR. The much bigger issue with pancake lenses, in my opinion, is light transmission efficiency, or rather inefficiency. You need a significantly brighter display to get the same perceived brightness value at your eyeballs versus Fresnel's. Meta Quest Pro is the only headset on the market that uses pancake lenses, but in order to maintain luminance, it retains a conventional, lower resolution LCD that gets really, really bright. So it'll be interesting to see if Apple can pull off pancakes with micro OLEDs. Now, to be fair, micro OLEDs are known for their brightness, so one would suggest that, yeah, this probably is possible. But they're also known for their high cost. Same with the pancake lenses themselves. I mean, look at the price of the Meta Quest Pro. Spec for spec, it's not that much better than the Quest 2, but it's a lot more expensive. That's because these lenses are expensive. Apple's expected unit cost on their pancake lenses for their headset is $40 US. That is about 30 times more expensive than comparable Fresnel's. As for the displays, oh boy. The largest micro OLED screen that Sony currently offers is 1/3 the size that Apple would need. It's only 1080p, not 4K, and it's also not sufficiently luminous to run pancakes, and it costs $240 for one eye. So it's very possible that the displays in this thing would be pushing north of $1,000 wholesale. And that's not where the expensive components would stop either. Bloomberg's Mark Gurman has stated that the first model will ship with an M2 chip and a secondary ISP to combine all the camera and sensor data for tracking and also to handle mixed reality camera distortion. To make matters even crazier, Gurman also stated that the original plan was for the first headset to be even more powerful, featuring a separate hub that would do external processing and then beam the data to the headset wirelessly. But former design chief Johnny Ive apparently vetoed the idea. Still, an M2 is quite powerful, perhaps too powerful. If you've ever used a Quest 2, you may have noticed how uncomfortably warm the headset gets after just a few minutes of play. And that's a headset with a much lower TDP SoC, significantly more thermal mass because of the larger headset, and a processor much further away from your face thanks to those Fresnel lenses. So, well then what is Apple to do? Now I can't believe I'm saying this because it seems so un-Apple, but apparently they've moved on from the idea of a fully self-contained headset to the idea that the battery pack, at least, which is typically one of the hotter parts, but perhaps even the SoC, would be external to the headset. You'd put it on your belt and there would be a cable that would run from your belt to the headset itself. This doesn't sound very Apple-like. Now, I've used wireless VR in the exact same manner, and it's actually a pretty decent experience, but this is Apple we're talking about, a company that wants everything to be self-contained and perfect and elegant. An external battery pack is not that. Furthermore, they may have been forced to do that because the battery pack itself is said to be rather large, about the size of two iPhone 14 Pro Maxes stacked one on top of the other, and that even with a big and presumably heavy battery that large, it's only expected to power the headset for about 2 hours. Holy smokes! There must be some serious sensor magic involved sucking a lot of juice. So, let's talk about that sensor suite. It's expected that 8 camera modules will be used for see-through mixed reality, and 6 of those modules would be used for, quote, innovative biometrics, end quote. Now, what could such a thing be? Well, all the rumors seem to be in agreement that A, no iPhone will be required to use the headset, interesting, and B, the headset will not support any physical controllers. Rather, everything will be done with hand tracking. The information goes so far as to say that all body movement will be tracked to at least some extent, your legs, your arms, and even your facial expressions. There's 2 LiDAR modules, one short and one long range, that will help with movement tracking and also room mapping, and there were allegedly sensors to track your eyebrow and jaw movements, but those have recently been replaced, according to reports, in favor of using machine learning instead. How they will see your eyebrows with machine learning? I don't know. Maybe it's your eyes? Do your eyes do stuff? In addition to eye position tracking, it's also been said that there will be an iris scanner for biometrics. Face ID, literally. Oh, I guess it's ID. ID. E-Y-E-D. So that's the hardware, but what on earth is Apple going to do with this friggin' thing? Because you may have noticed that not once have I said augmented reality, because this headset will do no such thing. There's going to be 2 environments, a dedicated VR mode, and then using a knob in the shape of a digital crown on top of the headset, the user will be able to transition to a mixed reality mode, wherein they can see their surrounding environment, but using pass-through cameras, not transparent lenses, a feature found on basically every VR headset since forever. Now, there's no doubt that Apple's pass-through cameras will be best in class, but they can't beat actually seeing your physical surroundings with your real eyes through transparent glass. So the software library better be able to make up for that. Yeah, this is where the rumors start to get spotty, because supply chain links are much easier to identify than leaks inside of Apple. But this is what is rumored to be coming. The internal name for the operating system, XROS, is a fork of iOS and is said to look nearly identical to that of an iPhone, with a grid of app icons on a springboard. Some rumors even suggest you'll be able to run existing iOS apps in 2D in VR. That sounds like a really awful experience to me, and I can't imagine something like that becomes reality, especially considering a very different navigation method. To operate the device, you will simply direct your gaze towards an item displayed on the screen, such as a button, app icon, or list entry. Then, with the pinch in of the thumb and index finger, said item will trigger in the user interface. Now, what will you actually be able to navigate to? That's a great question. It's said that one of the big reveal demos will be FaceTime. The M2 will apparently realistically render a user's face and full body in VR, which would allow you to video conference with another Reality Pro user in a virtual room. Not dissimilar in concept from Meta's Horizon Worlds, but Apple's is alleged to create a photorealistic version of the individual rather than a goofy cartoonish avatar found on Facebook's platform. But it's also stated that due to the immense processing power of this feature, it will only work initially for one-on-one FaceTime calls. Group calls? Yeah, other users will still be displayed as emoji. Okay, I mean, that's cool, but that's hardly what I would call a cool platform seller, especially given that essentially 0 companies at the moment are using FaceTime for work, where this would actually be a useful feature. Unless you plan on buying a $3,000 headset for grandma, too. But of course, that's not all this thing can do, right? Apple is reportedly focused on video consumption for the device, at launch having worked with Disney, Dolby, and a variety of others to develop VR-specific content for the headset, in addition to, in Gurman's words, updating its own Apple TV material to work with the headset. But I don't know what that means. I have to expect it's more than just throwing a 2D video player on an artificial projection surface in a virtual movie theater, because I mean that concept was done by Big Screen VR back in 2016 and copied time and time again since then. So perhaps they're talking about 3D? But we've seen all the behind the scenes content for multiple Apple TV shows now, and no such cameras were used on set. Are we to believe that people at Apple, in addition to thousands of crew members, suppliers, producers, and actors contracted by Apple, had kept this a secret for several years? Yeah, that's also unlikely. So maybe there's a special episode of Ted Lasso in VR where you can walk around the locker room. But is that going to sell people on a platform when Steam is filled with dozens of really good interactive storytelling games for VR already, and you can do it on a headset a fraction of the cost? Yeah. Perhaps not. So let's talk about games, because it has widely been suspected that gaming would be a big part of this headset's value proposition, and that seems pretty logical, given that gaming is really the only niche that's embraced VR to date. Apple's AR kit has been available to devs since 2017, but it's focused on AR and would need big updates for VR. But Cupertino is allegedly working on that and also an underlying game engine specifically designed to power VR-specific titles. That's pretty cool, and presumably that would be launched at WWDC this year, when the headset itself is expected to be unveiled. But it's not like games are going to pop up within weeks or months of the announcement of this engine. In fact, even if the headset doesn't ship until the end of the year, that's still a really tight deadline to make a game that's frankly any better than the myriad of shovelware available for VR in Steam already. It's not a game-changing selling point. So then what would be? Well, perhaps the rumored ability to use the headset as an external monitor for a Mac. Being able to see one huge virtual display, or a triple monitor setup, or a 360 degree, or whatever, where you could sit in your airline seat and do your work. That could be a potential game changer for a lot of industries, especially if Apple does pass through really well to put your real-world keyboard and mouse into virtual reality, like the Immersed app for Oculus does. Quite well, I might add. It does seem that you will need a keyboard for your Mac, because the mid-air virtual keyboard Apple was hoping would be ready at launch is said to be still rather buggy, and text input will be done primarily using handoff on an iPhone that's passed through the mixed reality cameras. So, getting down to brass tacks, this is a project that has been underway for many years. Heck, there have even been rumors and leaks of its existence dating back to 2017. Apple has been consistently mocked for failing to innovate, for coming to the market years behind everyone else, with mere refinements on existing technology. Now, I don't really believe that. I mean, look at what AirPods did to the true wireless buds industry. But this is a fascinating product to me because it does seem very un-Apple to not only venture into a market that really hasn't been fully developed, but one that has consistently failed to capture a wide market. At 62 years old, Tim Cook is getting older, and in an interview 2 years ago, he stated that he wouldn't be CEO of Apple 10 years from then, but that he still had a few things to do at Apple before it was time for him to leave. The clock is ticking, and if you put yourself in Tim's shoes, well, he's viewed by Wall Street, and quite fairly, I think, as one of the most successful CEOs in history. His influence on Apple has been inarguable, but influence does not equate to legacy. The Apple Watch released under Cook's purview, though its development was already fairly well underway when Steve Jobs died, and since then we've gotten AirPods, Apple Silicon, and a couple of other cool services and knickknacks, but nothing like the iPhone, nothing that you can point to and say, that changed the world. And look, Cook is certainly not Steve Jobs, so maybe he doesn't care about that. But a recent report release suggests that he and Jeff Williams, who is the chief of operations at Apple and Tim's likely successor as the next CEO, are pushing hard for Reality Pro to release this year, despite the behest of the design team that Williams oversees, claiming that more time was needed. That technology needed to progress further so that a true AR product could be released, something like a pair of glasses, something that's not a pair of ski goggles. Maybe the sudden departure of Evans Hankey, Apple's former VP of Industrial Design, was the result of a rift between design and engineering, or product development and management. We won't really know. But what we do know, and what we have been led to believe, is that this product is going to be a huge departure from Apple's pro forma. Gurman suggests an eye-wateringly expensive $3,000 retail price for the Reality Pro headset. That is 3 times more money than the Meta Quest Pro, which people already think is overpriced. And even at that price, not only would it fail to meet Apple's typical gross margin expectations for a new product, but that the unit cost would exceed the sales price. In short, Apple is actively and willingly losing money for every unit on this headset, if that is to be true. What? Sell something for $3,000 that costs more than $3,000 to build? Why would they do this? Well, at $3,000, it's not going to be a mass market product. Apple's exclusive manufacturing partner, Pegatron, is expecting to sell fewer than 1 million units total in the first year. Compare that to the iPhone's 200 million unit annual production run, and it's peanuts. Even compared to the Meta Quest 2, which has shipped 20 million units to date, it's nothing. Shipping units now, in 2023, will allow programmers and enthusiasts and others willing to spend $3,000 to start developing and creating and doing things with this headset that will instill desire in regular consumers once Apple can finally produce a lower-end, more cost-effective headset into the future. Yeah, this first headset is going to be feature limited and content starved, and people will laugh about how it's overpriced. The hardware will seem archaic just a few years from now, and Apple's predictions about what it might be into the future could be completely wrong. But another product was just like that, and it changed the world. It was the iPhone. Legacy can't be built without risk, and Apple has been viciously calculated for a long time. Too long. This is the first time we have seen Tim Cook act like Steve Jobs, and I really hope that it'll pay off. Well, if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. Leave your thoughts down below on what you expect the Apple Reality Pro to be. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, stay snazzy.